What is going on, boys and girls of YouTube? So today, more Overprime guide, information, teaching. It's for the support role for today. Covering Eira first, I'm going to talk about the support build. You can run this on anyone you're running in support. Ideally, you're playing Eira, Cynthia for more range, true support. They are top tier. Eira is unmatched currently. This is obviously an early beta, but Eira, Cynthia, top tier. And then you've got Scott as your more frontline support. He plays great and he is god tier. And then outside of that, others work. Urk actually works as a support, but he's not quite as strong. And I really wouldn't look too deep outside of that. I'm not saying don't play other characters. I'm just saying those are your top three by far. And these builds are going to cover that. And it's kind of what I want you to worry about while building. Hit the like button if you like these videos. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And let's just jump into this guide so you guys aren't missing out on too much. So we're on Eira. Starter item is a must. This item is something you have to have if you are supporting. You have to. It's the only way you get gold. So if you notice the passive on this item, on the Decima Gemstone of Abundance, obtain 10 gold each time an enemy is dealt damage. So when you're duo laning with your ranger or whoever's in your duo lane, anytime you hit the opponent, so that's a 10-second cooldown, so every 10 seconds, if you're hitting them, you get 10 extra gold. And then you obtain 5 gold for each Tion, which is basically a creep, any lane creep that dies, you get 5 gold for. You won't get gold if you don't have this. You should not be last hitting. Your ranger, your carry should be last hitting. So you're just there getting free gold with this item. You have to have this item. Late game, you can obviously sell it, but it gives you wards as well. And currently, there's no other slot for wards until they put that in. Hopefully, they do. So you would be the only person warding late game as well. So realistically, you're going to upgrade this Decima Gemstone and keep it. Plus, it's unlikely you get full build on this character. So your first item, just overly important. This item is completely broken. So Mitre of the Sacred High Priest. It gives a shield for 400 to 555 damage that lasts for 3 seconds and is on a 40-second cooldown. If you play Smite, it's Shell. It is insanely strong. 200 health, 150 mana. You get mana regen, so you can sustain and keep spamming abilities. It's a cheap item. It's 2,600 gold. It's one of the cheaper items in the game. Then it has a passive of giving 8 physical and 8 magical defense to everyone around you. So you're getting 8 physical, 8 magical to yourself, to everyone around you, a ton of health, and you have that shield proc, which will always keep you alive. And when paired with the rest of this character's kit, that shield you get, you're just getting way. Now I use a 2, like you double up on shields for everybody. It is way too much, way too strong. Must be gotten. Like, in my opinion, it's a must buy all the time. Third item, I think this is just overly broken. You're only getting magical defense, so you'll be squishy at this point, but because of your range and your shields, it should be okay, and it should keep you alive. I like going into the Deuce X. That's because realistically, you don't usually hit full build as a support. It's kind of hard. You might, but it's not all the time. This is going to be a beads user. You can beads your teammates. Basically, you can remove the CC on them. So if you see them about to focus somebody, you see a Beatrice about to ult your carry, you hit them with this, and they're out of the CC. They're gone. Very strong. Really good to have. Especially since most carries are not going to build a crowd control removal item for a long time. Then you want to get a little bit more physical defense, which is your marching melody, and that's what I would recommend going. And this is for your range. It's going to work really well. And then if you are being focused, something like Ice Spirit Gloves, super strong, going to give you even more cooldown. At this point in the game, though, you have the 10% off of your might, or you have 8% off of the melody. You've got the little bit of defense, no physical defense off the Deuce. So you do want to get some physical defense and some cooldown. That's why I think getting the ice gloves at this point would be overly powerful. And something you want to get just so you can survive and spam a little bit more. And if you do ever end up having anyone dive you with attack speed, that passive is going to counter them. And then your final item can be one of 2 things, or kind of 3 things. It just depends on your positioning. You can go into some power if you're trying to, get off a little bit of damage. On Eira, you're not really going to do that. On Cynthia, you might be trying to get off a little bit of damage, but you can just go with the judge of the battlefield, just going to heal. It's going to give you a lot of health, and then it's going to have a use, or the active use, where you can heal your teammates. It does damage to enemies and heals your teammates for 400 health. So pair that with the shields. You've got your fat shield here, you've got your big shield here, and then you pair that with dropping this heal on top of them, or if your teammates are doing damage to the enemy. It's very strong. And this build, if you manage to hit full build, will absolutely crack the enemy and be insane. Now, for the flip side supports, it'll change a little bit, but this build will work on Eira. It will work on Cynthia. You can swap out if you don't feel like you need the crowd control reduction off of Deuce X. There's another item which I think is insanely strong and probably one of the best items in the game, but you have to be comfortable using it and realize what it's giving you, and also notice that you're not that tanky when you have this item. It's Chain of Unity. Whenever you buy this item, you create a ring that links with an ally teammate and you take 20% of the damage they take. So if they get hit for 100, they're only going to get hit for 80 and you're going to take 20 of that damage for yourself. Makes it crazy strong for a ranged character who can't really frontline because your teammates need to have some of that damage pulled off of them while doing this, and also shielding. So remember, your shield can eat that damage as well. Ridiculously just powerful item to have overall. I like that item, and if I do end up going that, I would push everything forward, and I wouldn't necessarily not go Deus Ex altogether, but you would go that way later if you do want it. But I would look at getting Marching Melody. I would look at getting, you know, your Ice Spirit gloves. I would look at getting Deus Ex whenever you need it, just to have that CC crowd control removal effect. Massive. And I would look at a build like this where you're going to be a little bit lower defensively, but just very, very powerful as a support character. And I think support characters are the best characters in the game. Like, I think they are the most valuable characters in the current way the game is seeming to be played over the beta. I think if you have a good support, you'll win a game. If you have a bad support, you probably aren't winning the game. Last up on the support, since we talked about Eira, and I went over the same build and said basically you can build that build on Cynthia, so there's no reason to cover her, is Scott. He is played differently. Scott is different. He's a frontline support. He's not a sit in the back with the team support. He's an in your face, you know, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be annoying, and I'm going to take a little bit of damage because you're going to have to auto me type support. And I think because of that, you need to be tankier. You still have to buy the abundant starter. If you don't have this, you can't farm. So you have to have this. You're still going to want that miter because of the shield proc, and just the overall stats are insanely strong. But then after this, I think you're going to have to be a little bit more selfish and less team. Notice how all of these items are very team-based. Big passives for the team, big stats for the team. I think you're gonna have to get a little bit tankier for yourself, and you're gonna look at going into like an officer's high-end armor because it's gonna give you a lot of physical damage. At this, most games right now, Cosmo hits hard as a mage or as a magic damage. There's a couple of magic dealers, but a lot of the damage is coming out of the rangers and out of the physical damaging assassins, just out of the assassins in general. Some of them are magical. Don't get me wrong, Beatrice magical. So pay attention to that, but physical defense, health, regen, and then less basic attack damage is going to be a massive stat to have for somebody at this point. I do still think Chain of Unity is crazy strong and something you're going to want to have. But if you aren't feeling comfortable with it, it's an okay item to swap. It just gives you so many stats. Like so many stats. Now, for your last two items, you have to really pay attention to what you're playing against. The enemy is heavy magical. You're going to want a little bit more magic defense, right? You're going to want to go into something like a Cloak of Atanus Swamp because it's going to slow them and it's going to give you magical defense. You're going to maybe want to Deuce if you're trying to hit that beads. But because you're in the front line, it's a lot harder to CC immune your teammates. But Ice Spirit gloves for physical. So if you want magical, I personally would go into the Cloak. And then last, if you need more magical defense, you're getting a little rough. The items are like Zinx's Claw is super strong. Zinx's Claw would also be a good item to go earlier. You could go into the Deus Ex, like I said, for the beads and for that magical defense. It's just harder to get away with this point because the builds don't allow a ton of it. But then you've got Artificial Gravity Inductor as your final real item for physical defense. It's completely up to you with Scott. He's a weird one. I'm not being super direct because you have lots of options. All of these items are good. I think going miter first is like core must have. I think if you're trying to survive, then the officer's high-end armor is very valuable as that second slot. I think if you're trying to do a lot more for yourself and be, you know, you almost like style play, make the plays as a support, Ice Spirit's going to be your slot here. You can always drop out the Chain of Unity. It's not a must buy. You do not have to have it. You can go for a Judge of the Battlefield, which will keep you alive. You can go for the Marching Melody. It's really any order will work for you. I just think miter has to be first, and then you have to determine whether you're playing for yourself, for your team. Artificial Gravity Inductor, though, that active is the best active, period. It decreases physical power on the enemy you hit, and it decreases their movement speed by 55%. So with your wall, this wall is going to slow them if they walk through it. Pair that with that item, with that inductor, they won't move. They will be slowed beyond all belief. Beyond all belief, because your wall is going to do a 60% slow. That item is going to do a 55% slow. So they pretty much don't move. Like right now, you literally just do not move at all. So it's another very powerful item to have. The problem is if they're pumping magical damage, you have to go a magical damage or defense slot here. You can't afford to go right into that item. So look at cloak, then look at this, and then you can go whatever you want. Chain of Unity still very strong late. If you manage to get to that full build, it's unlikely you do. This would probably be the build I would go to make plays, but also keep my team alive and just be super effective, which is gonna be that Miter first, right into the Ice Spirit gloves, considering if they do have physical, if they have physical damage. If they don't, I'm gonna go into the cloak first for magical defense. But then you're gonna go the other one. So either order, depending on what you need. More physical out of the artificial gravity inductor, and then the Chain of Unity, just gonna give you a lot of health and link you to your teammate and keep your teammates alive. I think this combo is filthy. And I think on a team fight engage, between the ult slam to knock them up, you're just going to do so much as an engaged support and still also support your team with the shield and everything else they need. So that's my Scott build for support.